It's raining outside, J-Man.
It's cold too.
Sunday, and it's a gross, rainy day. I'm going to be honest today. We did not fish.
Nope.
We thought about it because, it wasn't horribly cold today, but, I'm looking out there still this afternoon, and it's still raining. Has been all morning, and I guess we wanted to eat bacon and hash browns. So instead, we got up and made bacon and hash browns, hung around the house, watched TV, goofed off as a family, and that's important too, to digest things for the week and recoup the batteries, rejuvenate things. So this whole week, once again, it's been such a roller coaster of weather and temperatures. I was joking with some anglers on the water on Friday. We went out and did a social distancing photo shoot, and we were just talking about the pattern and how inconsistent things are. How one day it's 70 and sunny, and the fish definitely slide right up to the bank, and you're catching them, and it seems like whatever you throw, they bite. The next day, you wake up and it's 40 degrees in the morning, and it stays to the 40s until lunchtime, overcast. Fish slide back out into 5, 6, 7, 8 feet of water, and there's just been such inconsistency this last week. So it does keep you on your toes. It keeps you thinking. Water temperatures are still in the 50s. In fact, earlier this week, they were in the low 50s again. And by this weekend, yesterday, we found water temperatures flirting with that 60-degree mark. I would say most of the fish we caught, those specific areas were like 56 to 58-degree water temps. We did find some 59.5, 59.8. We found was the warmest I found. I did not register 60 degrees yet, but I'm again fishing mostly main lake, bays and that kind of stuff. I didn't go back into a boat channel. So if your boat slip is way back in a boat channel on Lake Minnetonka, you're probably seeing 60 degrees, but that's not uniform across the whole lake. So some consistent stuff we did continue to find, though, in terms of how we're catching our fish is I've been continuing to focus in under 8 feet of water. Last week we did catch a bunch of fish in 8 to 12. I'm doing better under 8 feet now for sure. But it's not quite 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot. I'm not seeing fish, bass specifically, on their beds yet. They're definitely locating themselves in specific areas, and some fish are not moving far from those areas, but I am not seeing fish necessarily staged on a bed, but we're very, very, very close. So you've caught a pile of fish this week. You've been spoiled. You spent some time over in Wisconsin with the in-laws, and I think you caught more fish off the dock than I did all week. I mean, similar pattern as we're seeing here in the metro of Minnesota. I would say we're, laterally speaking, in terms of weather patterns and consistency there, we're seeing the same things as he saw straight east of us. How'd you catch your fish, Jack?
On the dock, I was actually just flipping under docks and stuff, and just using the Mr. Twister Kamita, which I think that's one of my favorite plastics to use of all time, because you can use it in many ways. You can use it as a wacky rig, so you're just letting it sit and sink slowly, a jig worm. There's many ways you can use it. And if that didn't work, I was using a chatterbait and kind of just checking it out and covering water. So kind of something that we normally do in Minnesota. Wasn't too different, and I was smacking down on the bass. So.
And you're limited because obviously you're on a dock. You can't drive your boat around. But I say limited with a frown on my face, because even though he was limited, he got more fish than us some days. So he covering water with the chatterbait. You notice how he changed his pattern up. So, and that's the same concept you can use in the boat. So if you pull up to a specific spot, so many anglers will just maybe burn through it with a chatterbait, or maybe come through slow with just a wacky rig, or just flip a jig. What you need to do on some of these spots this time of year is you have to adjust your presentation according to the mood of the fish. So I may come through with a chatterbait or a swim jig and fish over the top of these fish too fast. And then you'll see another angler come by slow with, let's say, a wacky rig or that approach, and catch them. And I watched Jimmy Bell do that on Friday on Minnetonka. We had that social distancing photo shoot where I would come through a spot with a chatterbait, try to get an impulse strike, and then Jimmy and Allie had come through, 40 yards away, kind of float through the same area with a wacky rig and fish it slow, and I'd watch them bow up on a bunch of fish. So then you kind of learn these fishing behaviors are different. So, what I had is a 1-2 punch, like Jack mentioned. I had an impulse bait, whether it was a chatterbait. I threw swim jigs, all-terrain swim jigs a bunch, and then I'd have a wacky rig set up on another rod. And one thing I did to get some of these fish to go, because I noticed that some of the larger fish they were in water just deep enough that you really couldn't see them. So they were like in that 6 foot, 7 foot, maybe even 8 foot range, where if you got up into 3, 4, 5, 6, you caught fish, but they were the 15 inchers, 13 inchers, they weren't your big fish. So what we were doing a little bit to get some of those bigger fish to go, instead of fishing a weightless wacky, I was taking my favorite jig head presentation, which is the Mighty Jig, and I was taking like a 3/32 ounce chartreuse, and I was actually wacky rigging on this. So instead of fishing it like a traditional jig worm where it's gonna dart and shoot straight down, I would fish this, let's say in deeper water most of the summer in the coontail. I was taking a cometa or a pocket fry, and I was wacky rigging on this. It makes it fall faster, but then I can pulse it. I can pump it back to the boat, much like a jig worm, and it fishes slower than a jig worm. But I can get it down there to those fish. So this is kind of call it a hybrid version between fishing something aggressive like a chatterbait or a swim jig and fishing just a standard weightless wacky. So I was fishing this with fluorocarbon, 4-foot fluorocarbon leader on the end of 20-pound braid, and we picked up a lot of fish doing that in the last few days in that 5 to 8 foot range. I can pitch it a little further if I had some windier conditions. Fishing a weightless wacky, don't get me wrong, is going to seal the deal every time on these fish. But if you got a 10-mile-an-hour wind, or you're out there a little deeper and you want to be a little more effective, try fishing a jig head. You can wacky rig on a jig head. It does not have to be just a plain hook or even some of the weighted hook contraptions. You can use a standard jig head and wacky rig that as well. So make sure you try that. So another thing that catches a pile of fish right now is just a twister tail. And again, I'm a big on contrast. So I'll use, this is that fat curly tail for Mr. Twister, and this is just the smoke chartreuse pattern. You can see how different in contrast that has. And I can fish it on that same jig that I just showed you, and I can just cover a pile of water. I can fish this in 3 feet of water and swim it back to the boat just like I would a swim jig. I can fish this in 12 feet of water and let it go down and hop it along the pockets. I can pitch this along a dock line. So if you want to get out there and just catch fish and cover water this time of year, because the fish are in a variety of situations and patterns, I take that twister tail, and all I'm doing is threading it on my Mighty Jig. I'm not teaching you anything you don't already know. And again, your bag of tricks is probably something you can lean on, and you can fish that Mighty Jig twister tail combination pretty much anywhere right now, whether you're on the river, whether you're on a lake, whatever it might be, and just plain and simple cover water. And it's amazing how many times you get bit on just your standard twister tail. We overlook some of those patterns because we see everything we're inundated with, whether it's chatterbaits, swim jigs, all these cool new concepts. Just this plain jig head and twister tail will catch you a pile of fish. Did you try that at the cabin at all?
Actually I was using that. So down by my cabin we have a dam down there, and I actually caught a few bass using a twister tail. I'm not sure if it was the Mr. Twister tail, but I just found some twister tails. I think it was from Berkeley Power Minnow, or Berkeley
Power Minnow, yep.
Yeah. And I was just putting them onto some jig heads, and I forgot to bring some Mighty Jigs and Mr. Twister tail. So I think next time I'm gonna bring some up to the cabin, because when you're out of, let's say, wacky rigs and Senkos, you kind of gotta look through the garage or boathouse and find what you can use to fish. But I actually did end up catching 2 decent-sized bass on some twister tails, so it worked out pretty good.
Smallmouth and largemouth.
Yeah, smallmouth and largemouth.
And a walleye.
And a walleye, yeah.
And a red horse sucker.
And a red horse, and a muskie.
And a muskie.
Yep.
Yeah, horseshoe. He's got a horseshoe, that's for sure. So, no, it's been a fun week. I think we're seeing things get to where they need to be. This next week, the Blackfish sun shirts, the neck gaiters, or sunscreen, sunglasses are going to be necessary. We're talking 80s most of the week for highs. It looked like we had a bunch of days in the 80s. It's going to warm up a ton. All these fish we think are staging for spawn, bass specifically, are going to be spawning. It's going to be on like Donkey Kong this entire week. The bite's going to turn on. That's my prediction. We're going to see a lot of good fish caught. The crappies, we should have talked about crappies. They're spawning now. We saw them spawning Friday, yesterday. They are stocked up on weeds. They are inside dock lines, inside weed lines. You can see these jet black, color of my coat, crappies stacked up. The spawn's going on there, and the bite's going good. So get out there, chase down some fish. I'm expecting to get on some good fish this week. I'm going to be throwing some reaction baits, swim jigs, chatterbaits, that sort of stuff. I may throw an AT jig in some of the pockets, Probably going to fish a wacky rig or some flipping baits if I start seeing some fish located on beds. Biggest thing is don't harass them. This is not the time of year to beat up on some of the bedfish as hard as you want. If you do see expansive shorelines with lots of bedfish, my observation is to maybe let some of those fish just kind of do their thing and not harass them, and maybe just cover water a little more. I understand for those guys and gals that are fishing the tournaments, you got to put the big fish in the bag. I get it, but this time of year, some of these fish are vulnerable to susception to being just beat on too hard. I'm seeing a lot of anglers on the water, more than I've ever seen, out there chasing down these fish. And if you do catch a big fish like that, quick photo, back in the water, let it go. Don't flop it on the deck of your boat. Don't let it lay there for 10 minutes in the basking sun while you take 20 pictures. Take a quick picture and let that fish go. Or put it in the net, leave it in the water, grab your phone. We do that all the time. We catch a nice fish, it's in the net, where's the phone? It stays in the water the entire time. We snap a picture and it's right back in the water. So don't abuse these fish more than you have to. Enjoy the sport, get out there and catch them, have fun. You're not doing anything wrong by catching them, but get a quick picture and let them go. So looking forward to a fun week. We're gonna chase some more fish. Memorial Weekend's next weekend. We may skip the report next weekend, be it Memorial Weekend. We'll see. I think we're going to go head over to the cabin, spend the weekend up there, and kind of get away. Maybe we do a report at the cabin, but if I don't get you next week, we'll do double duty the following week and talk about the last 2 weeks. But have a great holiday weekend next weekend. Enjoy some time with family. Be safe. Set some hooks. You're going to set some hooks.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to let me catch a couple next weekend?
If you're nice to me, maybe.
Yeah. Any other tips you had this week that worked for you?
No, just stay confident and don't give up. That's probably the most I can say, and I hope everyone has a great week.
Yep, be safe. Catch some fish, enjoy some time with family, smoke some food. We're going to smoke some chicken thighs later today. Eat well. Have a good one. Bye, Jack.